Mr. President, in about less than 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, the United States will have a new director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and those watching may conclude that perhaps there's still a debate going on about how we're going to vote. Everybody in the Senate knows how they're going to vote on this confirmation. And quite frankly, the President deserves the right to have someone at the CIA whom he trusts and is going to do a good job with this very critical agency. This is a critical component of our national security apparatus, and it is unfortunate that the first weekend as president, he had to have that position vacant. Nevertheless, that ill will be remedied here in about an hour and a half. I'm proud to stand here in support of Congressman Pompeo, who I got to know well. He was very supportive of my efforts earlier last year when I chose to pursue the presidency, and I got to know a lot about him in that effort and in that perspective and in that endeavor. And so I wanted to take a few moments to tell the people of Florida and those who may be watching this now or in the future a little bit about their next director of the CIA. First of all, he's an incredibly respected leader. Anyone who's interacted with him, anybody who watched this hearing before the Intelligence Committee would conclude that he was a star in terms of the way he presented himself, and that's in line with his honorable service during his time on the House Intelligence Committee, where he's been on for over 6 years. He's a graduate of West Point. He's an Army veteran. He finished at the top of his class at Harvard Law. And so I don't think anyone here would say that someone who went to West Point, who served in the armed forces, and who finished at the top of his class at one of the most exclusive law schools in the world is not qualified for the job. He certainly has the intellect for it. But he also has a very keen understanding of our national security issues, both as a congressman, but also from a practical perspective, having operated in that space in the Army. So Senate Democrats, unfortunately, have delayed his confirmation for political reasons. We, as I said earlier, could have voted on this last Friday, as unfortunately the Senate Democratic leader had promised the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. That word was not kept, but nevertheless we're here today and we're going to move forward. Our new commander-in-chief, as I said, deserves and needs the director of the CIA on this job as soon as possible, because we face a complex number of dangerous threats, perhaps more than at any time in our recent memory. These include the threat of radical Islamic terrorism in Iraq, in Syria, Southeast Asia, North Africa, even here at home. Russian aggression towards our friends and our allies in Eastern Europe and elsewhere. We face the savage Assad regime in Syria, which continues to slaughter innocent men, women, children, targeting civilians in Aleppo and in other places. We, of course, face an increasingly unstable dictator in North Korea, who continues to develop long-range missiles, soon capable of reaching the west coast of the United States, at least according to his claims. We face an emboldened China, who, in pursuing their illegitimate territorial claims in the South China Sea, threaten to destabilize the region. We face Iranian leaders. Iranian leader, for example, who still leads the chant of death to America every week as they cheat on the lax requirements of President Obama's flawed nuclear deal. We face illicit trafficking in the Western Hemisphere, right here in our own backyard, that destabilizes governments in the region and that floods the streets of our country with narcotics. Congressman Pompeo's national security experience makes supporting his nomination, quite frankly, one of the easiest nomination decisions I have faced in the 6 years and 1 month that I've had the honor of serving the people of Florida in the United States Senate. As a military veteran, as a West Point graduate, as I said earlier, he knows firsthand. Didn't read about this in a book. He knows firsthand the role intelligence plays in helping the president and others policymakers formulate both U.S. foreign policy and U.S. national security policy, and in turn protecting the American people. And so any delay in approving this nomination, quite frankly, I believe weakens America, and it strengthens our adversaries. It sends the wrong message, by the way, to the men and women of the Central Intelligence Agency, who are our first line of defense and among our finest public servants. Congressman Pompeo served our country in the Gulf War, and since 2011, he has served the country in Congress. And I truly hope that many of my colleagues are willing to cross the aisle and support his nomination. He is extraordinarily well qualified, and it is a phenomenal thing for our country that he will, here in a few hours, be the new director of the Central Intelligence Agency. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.